Welcome to the Asbestos Knowledge Empire.
What does asbestos management mean to you?
I used to really struggle with the asbestos management at my site, but now it's a breeze.
It used to be really expensive. I was paying loads, but now I've got my asbestos power team in place. It's so much easier.
Asbestos can be a pain in the arse if not handled right.
We had to stop the job because asbestos was discovered. Now we don't have that problem.
Asbestos management is easier than you think. Asbestos management. Be proactive, not reactive. Think about asbestos first, not last.
And now your hosts, best-selling authors and asbestos experts, Ian Stone and Neil Munro.
Welcome to the Asbestos Knowledge Empire. I'm Ian Stone.
I'm Neil Munro.
So today we've got a special guest in the form of Paul Knights, fellow director of Acorn. Morning, Paul.
Good morning. How are we all doing?
Good, mate. You?
Yeah, never been better.
Good. So today we've got Paul on board to talk through UKAS, the United Kingdom Accreditation Service, and what that means for clients, what it means for Acorn as an actual asbestos consultancy, the hoops that need to be jumped through, the reasons why, and just kind of a bit of a deep dive into UKAS, really, as an overarching thing. Within the asbestos industry, it's known and it's pushed that if you need services, they should be sought by a UKAS accredited company. However, the deeper sentiment behind it, like when you look at Corgi for gas safe, Corgi gas safe, all the rest of it, people know about that and they know about those schemes. And I don't know, there's kind of that knowledge out there of, well, you do know they are registered, you do know they get checked, you do know that they've got the right qualifications, but I don't think people know so much about UKAS.
No, I think to add to that, the issue surrounding that is kind of the ongoing issue with stuff relating to asbestos is, yeah, you have to have a Corgi or gas safe, as it's called now, registered to obviously work on your boiler. But there's a kind of an immediate perceived threat, isn't there? If you get the gas wrong, there's going to be an explosion, or it's going to, poison.
Yeah, carbon monoxide poisoning and all those things.
So if you get a moody contractor who's not registered to work on it, there's an immediate risk to life. Whereas asbestos, again, yes, there's a threat to life, but it's not an immediate threat, is it?
No, it's not going to blow up, is it? However, like we said on the podcast before, when asbestos goes wrong, it goes wrong in a big way. If you think of something being carried out by an unscrupulous contractor in an office or a school, for instance, and they don't follow the procedures, they mess it up, they expose people. It's not just the people in that vicinity and that initial exposure. It's got the potential to expose hundreds of people over a long period. And we know that essentially is what relates and brings the onset of asbestos-related diseases.
Yeah. And I suppose to add to that, there's two types of accreditation. There's one for the testing element and one for the inspection. Mm-hmm. Now, with the testing, that is written into the regulations that you have to be accredited to obviously test for asbestos. Yeah. Whether that be air monitoring or sample analysis. However, on the surveying side, it's not written into the regulations that you have to be accredited.
No, I mean, HC, they said strongly recommend, don't they, the use of UKAS accredited surveying companies. Yeah. But like you say, it's not written in. However, I think it should be. And it's funny, it's like I'm on the inside of the industry, so I know the rigmarole that is around being UKAS accredited and the benefit that gives us as a company. And to know that there is like a Wild West out there of people just cracking on doing a survey that don't do anything like that, it blows my mind a little bit. So those are the kind of things that I wanted to look at, really, Paul.
I think a lot of it as well is client-based. If a client's looking at different quotations, one from a UKAS accredited company, one from a company who's not accredited, there will be a huge difference within the cost of that service. Yeah. And clients sometimes think, well, cheap is normally the best. We're tight on the budget, let's go for the cheaper option rather than an accredited company.
Mm. Yeah. And again, you may not see that in the quotation. If you're comparing the specification of doing the asbestos survey on both quotes, it may look the same, but what you don't see is the back of house infrastructure and quality control, etc., that's going on in the background that gives more weight to one as opposed to the other.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, the requirements of the standard definitely put more pressure on employing the right people to do the right job. Auditors out on site, re-inspection audits out on site, quality control, QC checks for the analysts, QC checks for the bulk analysts. There's a lot more back of house that happens in regards to just going out and doing a survey.
Well, that's it. That's what I wanted to look at. I mean, what does our UCAS schedule as such look like? They come and visit us once a year for a few days, don't they?
We get an annual visit. Normally it's about 8 to 10 days, depending on what they're looking at and how they want to split it between our offices.
10 days, and that's 10 full days of being with staff on site and people in the office?
Yeah, we get a lead assessor who does the office audit work and looks into the quality systems of the office. We then get a second assessor who will go out on site and check the competency of our guys doing full-stage clearances, surveys, analytical work in the lab. So it's a full inspection of everything that we do, they inspect and look at for us.
So for some schemes, there's kind of like, I don't know, you'll get given an audit form that you have to go through and just tick box and show.
Yep.
It's not like that with UCAS, is it? They literally come in and do what they want. Like, they can look at anything.
They can start at any point, pull out any document they would like in the office or any slide, any bulk sample that we've had, and then do either a vertical audit or a horizontal audit. They can go anywhere that they want. There's nothing stopping them with what they can look at. And they can continue that out onto site. So they may well look in the office at contracts of employment, for example. They'll start looking at contracts of employment, then they'll start looking at training, history. Has the surveyor got a P402 or the RSPH equivalent? They'll then follow that through to the date when they receive that. They'll see if they've had 6 months relevant experience, if they were a new surveyor prior to being authorised. So they really do look in detail at exactly what we do and how we do it, and how we authorise staff and how we ensure that they're competent before we just, we don't just throw them out on site with a bag of tools and off they go surveying.
So it's a full kind of audit trail that they look at, of our audit trails.
Yeah.
They're auditing our audits and our trails and making sure we've dotted the I's, crossed the T's.
Yep, 100%.
So what other things do they look at when they... what does a normal UCAS audit look like? When they turn up, what kind of happens? Talk me through what usually happens with them.
So normally they'd sit down in the office, we'll have an induction, go through all the elements, what they're required to look at on the ISO standards. And that's 17020 and 17025. So that's basically inspection and testing. Mm-hmm. They then use documents called RG8 and Lab 30. So RG8 refers to the surveying side, Lab 30 is for the analytical side, and they will use those two documents to ensure that we are operating as a UKAS accredited company in line with the ISOs. That's what they're looking for.
Yeah.
So they'll start basically with our control manual, work our way through the control manual, see how we've detailed that we're going to do something in accordance with the standard. Then when they go out on site, they check that our operatives are working in accordance with the guidance and with the standards. And
with our control manual and the way we've said it. Because I suppose that's the thing. Everything's up for interpretation, isn't it? There's the guidance and the standard, but there isn't a defined way of doing certain things. So I suppose you go to a lot of different companies that are UKAS accredited and each will have their own individual way of doing them.
There's different ways that you can authorise different staff based on different quantities of audits. There's different ways you can split and authorise analytical staff for four-stage clearances. But as long as you are operating within the standard, then you can do it in different ways. That doesn't matter. As long as you're doing what you say you're doing, that's what UKAS will inspect.
I suppose the standards are just a bare minimum framework, really, isn't it, of what's needed. Okay, so day one, we'll have that meeting. And then what happens? Discuss and kind of... Do they already know who they're going to go and look at on site before they turn up? Do they make that decision? Do we make that decision for them?
They would normally correspond to us previous to actually coming out, and we would recommend or they would say we'd like to see a management survey or we'd like to see a full-stage clearance on.
Okay, so they just give you the kind of the pointers on the stuff that they're kind of choosing they want to look at.
Yeah,
on
we
a
work
visit.
to a 4-year schedule. So within that 4-year schedule, they have to have a look at every single thing that we're accredited for within the 4-year schedule. So they don't have to do everything within the first year unless it's a reassessment audit.
Okay.
So as long as they pick a variety of what we do, then that's fine. They'll look at that next year. The next year they come, they'll change it. They'll look at something different.
But over 10 days with this, they must get to look at quite a lot of our work and everything that we do.
Yeah, so on the last visit, they looked at a demolition survey, a refurbishment survey, a management survey, analytical on site, and bulk analytical in our office.
Okay, that's pretty much everything that we do.
Comes quite a lot. Yeah, it comes quite a lot. But if they can, they've got the opportunity to do it, they tend to do it.
Yeah.
And then this one was a little bit different because it was mainly done on Teams. We didn't have the office visits. It was just uploading the documentation.
Okay, so mind you, I suppose that was, in some respects, that was harder for us this year because if you don't have everything to hand and you haven't got an efficient system that, you don't use all the while as such, that would have been more difficult to actually pass the audit and process.
Yeah, you have to have everything in place.
Yeah.
So you can't sort of hide from UKAS. If they want to see a document, they'll ask you for the document. If you haven't got it or you can't find it, then they'll obviously write that down as non-conforming work, and then you'd have to provide that at a later date to them.
Okay, so non-conforming work, what does that look like and what does that mean?
It could be anything. For example, if they went to site and one of the operatives was setting the microscope up wrong, they would comment on that and say it's non-conforming, i.e. you're not doing it as it is specified in your control documents that you should be doing it.
Yeah.
So then they would basically note that down. We would have to then rectify that issue and provide, not always, but the majority of the time we have to provide evidence.
Yeah.
So we would have to either get that member of staff in, do refresher training for him, or if it's something that's fairly simple or minor, we could do that with the toolbox talk, send that out and cover all the operatives, and then everyone's read and understood what the requirement is. From there, we would then pick that up on our audits to make sure that everybody did understand what was required, and they are doing it on their audits, and it's noted and documented.
So they're kind of checking the checker, really, aren't they? Because as a company, yourself and Ian head up the technical department and check and audit our staff. And I suppose that's UKAS's position to make sure that we're doing our jobs properly. And so if you have a lot of non-conformances, say you have, people aren't doing stuff right, you've had a change, things aren't being followed and stuff, can UKAS kind of pull their accreditation?
They can.
Yeah.
Yeah, they can. So if they were to come to a company and, for example, they wanted to go through their audit schedule and nobody had been audited within six months plus, then they could look at that and go, well, you're not working in accordance with the standard.
So they do have teeth, and the fact that the accreditation actually stands for something. It's not just you pay your money, you get your badge. If you're not actually doing what they've asked you to do and what you should be doing, they will take that away from you. So essentially, you can lose your licence to trade.
Yeah. You can lose your UKAS accreditation. A lot of companies tend to hand it back because it's so much hard work in maintaining and keeping that level of quality and competence within the business that they'd sooner not bother, and they'd sooner go back to how they were doing it originally. So they either don't renew it or they just let it lapse.
Right. So like for new companies coming on that think it's easy to get and maintain, they'll pass the first audit and then let everything lapse.
Don't realise what work goes into it.
Yeah.
Keep on top of it, I suppose, because it's that constant, isn't it? When you're taking new staff on, keeping the existing staff authorised and audited. And we haven't even talked about re-inspections and stuff like that, which is outside the actual individual audit, but more from a company-wide audit sort of scheme as well, isn't it?
Yeah, from the company audits, we have to do, on surveying, we have to do 5% re-inspection audits on surveys, which means that, again, you have to go out, and it's an overhead to the business. You have to go out to site, you have to re-inspect sites that our guys have surveyed, be that on a management refurb or demolition, just to make sure that the information they've collected is the same.
This is somebody going out to a previous job that we've done and checking it to see, was that survey right or not?
Was that right? Was the information collected the same? Was there anything there that they should have sampled that they didn't? Were there things there that we we did expect them to sample and they didn't. So we can look at it from that point of view, and it gives a good, really, really good cross-reference of all of the surveyors, just to keep an eye on competence, because the surveyors don't know we've been to site.
Yeah.
They're never told which sites we're going to. Even on the audits, when we do audits, they don't know we're coming. They're unannounced audits. So they're kind of, we just turn up and audit them there and then, and whatever we find is what we find.
Yeah. How do you kind of pick those?
We've got basically a 4-year and a 1-year audit schedule. So we have to see everybody again within a 4-year cycle. The audits are kind of picked. We try and go every 6 months. One audit. Minimum standard is every 12 months, but we're trying to do every 6 months. So at least we see everybody twice within a year for areas that they're authorised for.
So that could actually be like multiple audits, couldn't it? Yeah, so if you're doing a management of refurb or demo, that's 6 audits in a year. If you're doing a management part refurb, that's another 2 audits in a year. There's actually multiple audits. It kind of
different types of building.
Yeah, exactly that, and that's it. It's you're right. It's different types of building, the different types of work, the different projects, and it all extrapolates out back as a big headache for you and Ian to sort out to get around the country and look at everyone.
Yeah, that's right. And I think one of the main problems, and historically we have had this as an issue, is when you are doing mass amounts of domestic properties.
Yeah.
That's a huge amount of re-inspection audits you've got to do.
Yeah.
Which is very difficult, especially on housing. It's somebody's home. You've got to then, book back in to go back and have another look. It's very, very tricky to do. And it's a huge amount of audits to do 5%. Some months you can be looking at doing between 30 to 40 re-inspection audits, which is nigh on a full-time job.
Yeah, that's because so you might do 4 houses in a day compared to one property, which takes 4 weeks.
Exactly.
Which you do one audit per job, basically. So it does make a big difference, doesn't it?
Yeah, huge difference.
So as far as audits and stuff go, and UKAS, we do see the benefits as a business. What benefits do you see to us from just having that stamp and seal of approval from UKAS?
I think competency. It's the level of competency within your staff. When one of our guys goes out to site, they can do the job. They've been audited doing the job. They know what they're doing on site, and they've got that overall level of, yes, they're not just got their bag of tools and they're going to go and take some samples. They've got the information, they've got the education, they've got the training, they've been witnessed doing it, and they've been audited as competent to do it. So, you can sleep at night. When you go to bed, they're going out there and they're doing the job right.
Yeah. Additionally to that, for me, with the quality side of it, it's not just about slapping people for doing stuff wrong, but it's also bringing their knowledge and their own competency up. With these audits, it's not just about telling them what they haven't done, but it's also praising them of the good jobs they have done, and also educating them on additional things while the auditor's on site. Have you thought about this? If I was doing this site, I would do it in this way.
Knowledge share.
It's knowledge sharing as well, and bringing the experience of the auditors and the trainers and passing that knowledge on in an on-site environment. It's all good giving this knowledge in the classroom, but actually when the auditors are on site, they're passing on that knowledge and experience on those types of site in the real world.
Yeah.
And that's a good thing.
No, definitely. And I suppose that's the thing. If you take it and you look at a company that's not accredited, well, everything that we've just spoken about, how do you get any of that?
Yeah.
You can't. And, there's 2 things at play, really. It's one, the knowledge share and the training and making sure that the standards are adhered to all the while.
Yeah.
And secondly, it's like the impartiality element and aspect that UKAS bring to it, because like you just said, they audit the auditors. And, you can sleep better at night because it's not just your own team kind of out there saying, yep, everybody's all good. It's this truly independent organisation that's got the right to remove your licence to trade if you're not doing it.
Not good enough.
But if you are good enough, then that's fantastic, because like you just said, Neil, you are getting those ticks in the boxes, and it's kind of like, we have checked all these people on all these different projects, like real life.
Yeah.
They're out in the field actually auditing, as well as like the lead assessor that's doing all the office-based stuff. There's the other assessor that's out there in the real world checking on everything, because we all know that there's classroom-based learning and classroom-based teaching, and that's one thing. But then, like you say, when you get out in the real world, there's a whole host of other different things that you have to consider that you can't get across in a teaching.
No, definitely not. And a big thing with UCAS is it's continual improvement, isn't it? It's basically making us as a company better, which then feeds down to hit that goal is we have to make our people better.
Yeah.
And that whole infrastructure is about getting the experience, getting the competency, getting the training, the auditing to obviously back all of that up, and continually improve it. Now, we all know that working on different sites, different types of buildings, we're always coming across, as a surveyor or as an analyst, you're always coming across something that maybe you haven't seen before.
Yeah.
And having the back of house department to quality check, train, audit, feedback just helps that ongoing continuing improvement.
Yeah, exactly, and sharing that knowledge around.
Yes.
Because again, it gets fed back into the department, and then the department shares that information.
Yeah, how can we improve?
And do you know what, you did say, like, you hit the nail on the head with the continual improvement thing. And for me, from an industry point of view, let alone a company point of view, that is kind of one of our core values of innovation.
Yeah.
Which it's literally sits side by side, continual improvement.
Yeah. How can we do this better?
Yeah.
How can we make it better for our clients and our people?
Yeah.
Which is equally as important. How can we make this company better for our staff, which then reflects into better for our clients?
Yeah. And it does worry me. Like if you do consider that there are companies out there not doing any of this that we've just said. There's companies out there just doing surveys, all the rest of it. On paper, you're getting a piece of paper from them, say whether something's asbestos or not.
I've been doing it 50 years, so I must be competent.
Or even not. I mean, that's the thing. I remember one of the ATAC roadshows years ago, they... I can't remember, it was either someone from BOHS or HSC stood up, and part of their presentation they were talking about people that have come into the asbestos surveying industry.
Yeah.
The story was told that there was like an ex-RAF pilot who came into the asbestos industry, did his 3-day course or whatever it was at the time, and then said, right, that's me, I'm an asbestos surveyor. And he went off into the big wide world as an asbestos surveyor. And I mean, it's like, I've got no doubt in my mind, right? The guy was an ex-RAF helicopter pilot.
Yeah, so it must be an intelligent bloke.
Intelligent guy, all the rest of it. However, what the hell has flying a helicopter got to do with surveying a building for asbestos? There's kind of, yes, you can go and pass a course, and that's the difference. An intelligent person can go and pass a course, but he didn't have that...
you can pick asbestos out on a bit of paper.
Yeah.
Which is essentially what you have to do to pass a course. But yeah, in the real world...
Yeah, and that's it. He'd never been in the real world.
In the real world, yeah.
And that's the concern of kind of people in the industry, not UKAS accredited, on paper, and if they can talk a good talk, you're won over as a client. However, in reality, are they the right person for you to be completing your works? Because for me, and it's not just because I'm on the industry, and it's like when I look to purchase stuff, I look for those types of schemes in other industries because, like we're saying, the gas safe one, that's an obvious one. It's needed. But there are other things in industries that aren't needed. However, it gives you that reassurance. And it gives me reassurance as a buyer because when I do my due diligence and I look into what it means to be accredited for their service, that kind of does give me...
Reassurance
and the confidence to actually buy and purchase, whereas there's other ways of going about it, which could be, I don't know, speaking to somebody down the pub and going, oh, do you know anyone? Oh, yeah, I've got a mate who does that. And you get the job done. But is it done correctly? Is it done to the right standards? And it's like you could be lucky with that and you get the right end as you saw fit. However, what happens if it does go wrong? Because if they haven't got those procedures in place to stop and look into like complaints and things like that and corrective actions, well, you're not dealing with a real company, are you?
Well, those companies will never improve.
Yeah, exactly.
They'll never improve. They'll never have to go and do an investigation on site. They'll never look into the root cause analysis, and they'll never improve. The surveyors will just keep doing the same mistakes that they've ever done on site. So that's another big difference.
That's huge. That is huge. Yeah. So with the UKAS audit, so what, we have it once a year with them. They do unannounced audits.
They do unannounced audits. We have them so far, they're annual. We've never had an unannounced audit, to be fair. Mm-hmm. So if they are going to come, we'd never know. They just turn up. Again,
I think that's only a good thing. It's fantastic because, like, you do unannounced audits on our guys, they can come and do unannounced audits on us. And I welcome that because, again, for me, that adds weight to the fact that it's a real system that's actually adding real value for our clients.
Yeah, it's real life.
It is real life.
There's nothing that you can fake. Everything's up to date. Everything has to be ready. If they turn up today and knocked on the door, they could come in, look at all of our training records, look at our audit cycles, and they need to be up to date.
Yeah.
So, and also the equipment as well, isn't it?
Yeah.
So
yeah.
That's a massive
huge
thing.
part. Yeah.
You know, making sure that our equipment is fit for purpose. You know, it's regularly maintained, inspected, tested.
That's a lot of equipment
and calibrated.
That's part of David's love of his life, isn't it? In the lab, he kind of takes charge of getting everything calibrated and tested, and
because if that's not working, then we can't do our jobs properly.
No, exactly.
And we could be putting people at risk.
100%. And let's think about it for a second. What we actually do. It's not just rocking up and doing something simple. It's a scientific methodology that we have to follow. We do laboratory analysis. We're dealing with microscopic fibres, and like you said earlier in your example, Paul, if somebody's not set the microscope up, well, that can have catastrophic outcomes for it. And if they have set it up, but the actual microscope's not been calibrated properly and it's out of calibration, again, they've followed the procedure. But if it's out of calibration, it's out of sync, which means you're not going to be able to spot the fibres, which are potentially going to kill people.
Yeah, huge mistakes potentially. So
yeah, it's really important.
It is. It was good talking about UKAS and kind of getting stuff out of my own head that, like I said earlier, it's being on the inside. I know how much time and effort that Paul and everybody else puts into maintaining our UKAS accreditation. And I just wanted to kind of share that with everybody else and clients who just perhaps don't fully appreciate the levels of detail that kind of Acorn go to make sure that our UKAS accreditation is maintained, and also that versus other people that are out there that are not in the field. And for me, that really would kind of make me think if I was going to the marketplace now to buy our services or any service, it's like if you can go to a company that's accredited and it's backed up with like real world accreditation, real world things, not where you just pay your money and they get a certificate, but something where they're actually audited and they're followed up with and they're checked upon, then for me that just adds a lot of weight to that company.
Definitely.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that one. I did. Remember, asbestos first, not last.